Hello, and welcome to Wrong Place, Wrong Crime. I really am happy to be here with you. I know some of you are expecting season 2, episode 2, but we've got to go back to the yogurt shop murders in season 1. Some of you who've been keeping up with the news know that there is a huge break in the case, and the case has been solved. I didn't know if I'd ever see that in my lifetime. I did that podcast last year, starting at the beginning in January. It's been going on for 33 years. And I did not think that would be solved unless DNA advanced far enough. And we're going to talk about it today, about exactly how it was solved. It's pretty amazing. And so let's get right into it. The yogurt shop murders. We, of course, know that we watched season 1. We know that there were 4 girls that were killed in the yogurt shop. You'll see their picture here on the screen fairly shortly. The murders happened on December the 6th, 1991, after 33 years. And pretty much, here's the story. In 2022, the case was reassigned to a new detective, cold case detective. And this cold case detective stated in the press conference the case was only ever going to be solved, and there wasn't really need to do anything else other than figure out whose male DNA was left at the crime scene. All the other stuff was frivolous. All the past stuff that had happened, the boys' confessions, any confession that anybody had given didn't really matter to him. He was focused primarily on finding whose DNA was left there at the crime scene. And in 2022, it comes back to 2 things that were left at the crime scene. There was DNA left at the crime scene by the perpetrator, and there was a .380 spent shell casing that was found in a water drain there in the back room. Now, the perpetrators thought that they had destroyed most of the evidence with the fire that they had started. And what the fire didn't destroy, water from the firefighters pretty much did. But the 2 pieces of evidence, the DNA and the spent shell casing, would end up 34 years later solving the case. The 2 little pieces of evidence that they had, they used. And technology finally caught up. Let me tell you the story of how it happened. The DNA that was used was called YSTR testing. It's a male chromosome test only. The profile in the past had 16 markers in 2008. That is what got the 4 former suspects off, because their YSTR tested, it did not match in 2008 any of the 16 markers. So that's why those 4 were not brought to trial in 2009. In 2018, with advancements in technology, YSTR DNA testing had expanded to 27 markers. So it had expanded where there were 27 now instead of 16, which is going to catch a lot more. It's going to provide a lot more information and put a lot more people in with capabilities of coming up with a match. So you ended up with advancements in DNA. In June of 2025, just recently in the last couple of months, the cold case detective took the .380 spent shell casing that was found in the floor drain. He took it to what's called the NIBIN. It's basically the CODIS for shell casings. Anytime that there's a crime where there is a gun used, they take the shell casing and they will put it in pretty much a database that goes around the country. So if that gun is used in another crime and the shell casing is found, they can match that gun up with that another crime. And that's what happened here. At the time, they had limited that 380 shell to what's known as an AMT brand backup model 380. And that was in the original ballistics report. So they knew certain type of gun that was used there on Amy Ayers. Remember, all 4 girls had been shot with a 22. None of those shell casings were found. Amy had fought with the perpetrator, as we're going to find out here in a second, and had crawled away, and she was shot one time with a 380, a different type of gun than the 22. That spent shell casing, when ejected, went into the drain, and therefore the perpetrators couldn't pick it up like they picked up the other 22 shell casings. On July the 2nd, with this new advancement and them redoing the shell casing and putting it back into the NIBIN shell casing database, on July 2nd, APD was notified that there was a hit on the 380 shell on the NIBIN, and it was a crime out of Kentucky, matched that shell casing. It was an unsolved murder in 1998. So the Austin PD reached out to the Kentucky town and the PD to see if they would, or if they had any evidence from that case that could possibly have any DNA, and see if the DNA matched their DNA. So they went and asked Kentucky if they would put their YSTR into the database to see if there was any matches either in Austin or in anywhere around the country. So the testing was done, and they actually did have some from a sexual assault kit that was used, that was found at the crime scene. With the new updates, they also had YSTR done manually. They don't have a YSTR like CODIS, and so they tested it manually across all the labs in the country, and it came back with a hit. Austin PD had everybody in the country manually do a YSTR manual check. In South Carolina, the sled came back with a identification on, or a hit on, the YSTR. And it was on a murder that had occurred on August 22nd, a sexual assault and murder in 1990 in South Carolina. The YSTR came back with the name Robert Eugene Brashers. Now, Robert Eugene Brashers had never been brought up ever in this case. His name had never been a suspect. He was not known to be in this area. He was not even known to be really in the state or in this area. So that's the first time his name had ever come up as a suspect, and anybody had ever looked at Robert Eugene Brashers as a possible perpetrator here in the Austin yogurt shop murders. The South Carolina cop, ironically, as we know and we talked about in season 1, the first question the South Carolina cop asked the Austin PD was, and he had not heard, the South Carolina sled officer had not heard of the Austin yogurt shop murders and didn't know any of the details. And the first question he asked to the Austin PD cold case detective was, were your victims tied up with their own clothes? Because that was the MO of Robert Eugene Brashers. Brashers would tie up his victims with their own clothes. Now, Brashers, a little bit of background on him and give you a little bit of information that we have right now on him. There's not a lot. There'll be a lot more information and study done on him, but what we know so far about Brashers was very similar to we talked about in episode 1, season 1, Kenneth Allen McDuff. Brashers should have been in jail. Ironically, he had shot a woman in 1985 in Florida. He was supposed to serve 12 years for attempted murder. He had tried to break into her house. She resisted, and he shot her. Unfortunately, he only served of the 12, he served 4 years and he was released in May of 1989. We know Brashers, on November the 29th, 1991, stole a car in Georgia. That was November 29th, 1991. The Austin yogurt shop murders, remember, happened on December 6th, 1991. Besides the DNA and the shell casing evidence, we know that he was in Texas or had come through Texas because he was picked up on December the 8th, 2 days after the murder. He was picked up in between El Paso and Las Cruces on I-10. On December the 8th, he was stopped on I-10 on a random border patrol stop. He was stopped in this stolen vehicle. Now, again, he is a felon. He has been in jail before, so he's not supposed to have any weapons. We know felons, you cannot have a weapon if you are a former felon. Patrol officer ran his play. Car came back, obviously stolen. So Brashear's trying to make a run for it. He got about a mile down the road, and the cops were able to stop him, and he was put in jail for 4 years. The ATM had the 380 from the yogurt shop. He had not gotten rid of the 380 after the yogurt shop in the 2 days between December the 6th and December the 8th. A 380 was found there in his vehicle. That's going to be important. The 380 goes into the system. Brashear's appeals and goes to the government, does a lot of paperwork, and gets the 380 back for his family. That's going to be important because Brashear's ends up with the weapon again. He gets it back from his, and you'll understand why that's important here in just a few minutes. As the 380 was found in the vehicle, Brashear's father gets the gun back, gives it to his son. Now, Brashear's, I'm not going to go down the sordid tale. There are all sorts of crimes after he gets out of jail in 95, 96. He proceeds to pretty much go on a killing spree. I'm not going to go through all the cases. I will probably touch on those at another point when I come back and we get more details on a further update. Nobody knows that he is suspected in any crimes. In 1999, he is caught in a motel because of a gun violation. Ironically, same 380. The police come to the hotel room. He basically threatens to shoot himself. The police ask him to release his wife and his kids. They get out of the room. A little bit later, Brashear's shoots himself in the head and kills himself in 1999 there in that hotel room. That 380 shell casing he used to shoot himself would be the shell casing that was put into the NIBIN that would come back as the match. So it was the shell casing that he used to shoot himself that ended up being the shell casing that would match him to the yogurt shop murder case and would put him as the prime suspect in this case. Now, you come back to the DNA. The Austin PD decided, because of new advancements in the YSTR, because they got YSTR from Amy's fingernails and there was new technology, Austin PD decided to run more testing on this YSTR that was found on Amy's fingernails. The YSTR came back 2.5 million to 1 that it could be anybody other than Brashear's DNA under her fingernails. So ironically, as her dad and many had said, they knew Amy would fight back. She had a lot of spirit, and she fought, and she got her fingernails on Brashear's and got his DNA under her fingernails before she was shot. This DNA ended up being the linchpin in the closing piece that solved this case. So Amy, fighting for her life, ended up solving this case. Now, you do remember that we talked about, the officer that was first called, John Jones. John Jones, in the press conference, was seen with his green shirt. Now, he had always made the promise, if this case was ever solved, he wore it that night, and he had never worn that shirt again. And he swore to the families, if you ever see me in this shirt again, it's going to be because I'm not going to wear it until the day I see you again when the case is solved. On Monday afternoon, Officer Jones was in that green shirt again. And you'll see a picture of him. He is smiling from ear to ear. So happy that this case has been solved. After all these years, after 33 and a half years, the yogurt shop murder case has been solved. Or has. You remember back in episode 6 of season 1, you have to remember that I'm not saying it is 100% Robert Brashears. I'm not saying that it's not. Don't mistake what I'm saying. But you have to remember, we don't want to. We've done this before, Austin PD, and we've spun narratives before in this case. But we have to do what the evidence tells us and what the eyewitness testimony tells us. Remember the two names. I'm going to repeat them here. Tim Stryker and Margaret Sheehan. And I'm going to close with this. I think the case is solved. Part of it. I really, truly believe there were two men in that yogurt shop that night. Let's go back and talk about it real quick in case you haven't watched season 1. You remember Tim Stryker, Margaret Sheehan come into the yogurt shop at 10:42 that Friday night. They're in the yogurt shop, and when they come in and they order their yogurt, there are two men, not one, there are two men sitting in that corner booth by the register. We've seen the pictures. You guys go back and watch season 1. I'm going to say season 1 is not a total loss. Yes, I may not have gotten the right person, but everything else that I talked about and hit on was true for Robert Brashears. Everything. The ligatures, all the things that I talked about in the MO was all the exact same. No, I didn't get the right person, but all the other points that I made are valid points. Just basically sub the name Kenneth Allen McDuff for Robert Eugene Brashears, and the case still stays the same. I'm glad Austin PD has found who did it, but we cannot ignore the evidence and the witnesses of Tim Stryker and Margaret Sheehan. They saw two men in that booth. We know it wasn't one person. We know it wasn't one person because of Tim Stryker and Margaret Sheehan. Eyewitness testimony says there were two men in that booth. And we know that booth was not cleaned. Again, I'm super happy for the DNA. I'm so glad that the shell casing in this case and evidence came about and got us a suspect. But there were two men. Let's don't be mistaken. There were two men in that yogurt shop that night. I know that. And if you watch season 1, you know that. Margaret Sheehan, Tim Stryker sat behind those two men in that booth. The two men that were in that booth were whispering. Miss Sheehan tried to hear what they were saying. She felt uncomfortable. We remember she said that she didn't want to leave, but Mr. Stryker thought that the girls were cleaning up and they needed to get out of the store. So they left at 10:47, and the girls locked the door behind them and turned the closed sign, which is exactly the way it was found. They did not let those two men out of that restaurant and then open it up for somebody else, for one other guy to come into that yogurt shop. They did not do that. The door was closed. And those two men that were in that booth are who killed those girls. One of them, as we know now, was Robert Eugene Brashears. 100%, no doubt about it. Who was the other person? And that's what we need to continue to look for in the question. Who was he with that night? Let's don't let the eyewitness testimony covered by a narrative that's not accurate. So let's keep pushing and push APD to continue to find out who Brashears was with that night. I am so glad again. I'm so happy for the families. I'm so happy for June Jones and the detectives who did a great job. They collected the evidence that night under extreme circumstances. No doubt about it. Fantastic job. It ended up solving the case 33 and a half years later. But we can't forget also Tim Stryker and Margaret Sheehan and those two men that were in that boat. We know the pictures. We see the tables. Every one of them was done except for, remember, that one booth that had not been cleaned. We know that those two men left that booth at about 11 o'clock. One of them went and put a gun at the cash register to force her to open up and do a register clean and take the till out. We know the story. We're not going to rehash it and go back all the way through season 1, but we know there were two men there that night. And so, again, that's the update. The case has been solved. I don't know if it's been solved all the way. We know that Robert Eugene Brashears was 100% one of the people. I will always believe that there were two men in that. There's nothing that you're going to tell me that's going to show me that he acted alone. We know he did it, not denying that, not trying to deny that. But there were two men in that yogurt shop. And Austin PD needs to continue to try and do as much research, background on this guy. Who did he know in Austin, Texas? Was he visiting somebody? Why did he come through Austin? Austin is not anywhere close to I-10. He would not have needed to come through Austin to go visit his dad in Arizona. Coming from Georgia, he should have gone I-20 all the way out to El Paso. For some reason, he came south to Austin. And so we need to find out why he was in Austin. Was he there meeting a friend? Did he know somebody here in Austin that went with him to that yogurt shop that night? Again, I'm so happy that the case has been solved and the families know at least one of the perpetrators for sure who was there that night. But what I don't want is to us forget the witnesses and what they saw there that night. We cannot ignore, again, Tim Stryker and Margaret Sheehan. That's the whole reason those two, that's why the four boys, because they always thought there was more than one person, because of Tim Stryker and Margaret Sheehan. And so we cannot just totally erase, we can't go back and whitewash and erase the eyewitness testimony of what happened there that night. I know we would like to and make it just one person, but we cannot do that. We need to, for them to continue this case and just don't drop it. They need to continue to find out who was there with Robert Eugene Brashears that night. I want to thank y'all for all watching season 1 and watching this up. Make sure you like and subscribe.